You're listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with Jess Weiner. Don't worry. This is a joyful podcast about life, death, and everything in between. For today's guest, I want to take you on a trip in the way, way back machine, back to fondue parties and AOL chat rooms and pagers. Yes, friends, I am talking about the early 2000s where I met our next guest. I had just gotten to Hollywood. I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and looking for a way to make an impact in this industry. And I don't know how, but we somehow ended up at a fondue party. For real, a fondue party at Super 70s. And he was walking out. I was walking in. We struck up some witty banter, and then boom, a friendship spark that literally has lasted over 20 years. He's one of the dearest and nearest people in my life, and his name is Michael Medico, and he is my guest on the show today. You probably have seen Michael Medico's work. He's a wonderful actor, a performer, a director, a philanthropist. You've seen his work, I say, because he's been literally in every single TV commercial. I mean, he's probably sold you food, a phone, and a car before you even knowing that was Michael. He's had a wonderful career as a performer, and now he is doing huge things as a TV director. He's directing some of my favorite shows, The Fosters and Good Trouble and Party of Five, and of course, the mega hit Grey's Anatomy. He also is now a papa to two incredible kids with his wonderful husband, Brian. And I knew just by the basis of our friendship that these were conversations I wanted to share with you. These are the conversations that Michael and I have all the time about life and death and loss and grief. He's experienced some tremendous losses in his life of family members. But I think the one thing that I really am excited for you to hear about in our conversation is about the idea of mental health and family dynamics. Because when we talk about living urgently and we talk about living a life that we love on our own terms, clearly there are lots of things not in our control, and mental illness is one of those things. Whether we're struggling with mental illness, whether we've got family members or loved ones, it's a real tricky conversation to have a lot of time. People carry a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of pain. And I think when we talk about looking at mental illness and mental wellness as something we want to fight for and champion and better understand, it is the unlocker for living a good life. So now that Michael is a parent, he's looking at those issues in his own family and his own history. We talk a lot about reparenting, which is a theme you've heard a couple times on this show, I believe, around how do we learn to nurture and parent ourselves in ways that we might not have gotten in our childhood. So Michael and I go on a beautiful journey in this conversation just about what it really takes to face ourselves, to learn how to love ourselves despite how we were raised or who we were raised by. And most importantly, how do we want to make a life that we love on our own terms, one that includes all the things that we love. And for Michael, that is philanthropy and art and social justice. And so he was a perfect guest in true Hollywood form. We hadn't seen each other very often before we met each other here in the studio to record. We used this interview as an excuse to get together, I think. And I'm so glad we did. We taped this in the beginning of our first batch of interviews at the end of February. So we didn't know yet what was to come, but I think this conversation is still so resonant, especially now as all of our mental health in this time is really struggling with the pandemic, with the racial injustice in the world, and with a lot of the stress and tension of the new time that we're in. I hope you find a lot of solace in these stories today. And of course, true to form, I mean, we're totally nerds together. We don't get through much of this conversation without breaking into song. So you're welcome. Without further ado, here is my friend, Michael Medico. Let's dig in. Michael Medico.
Yes. Jess Weiner.
I haven't seen you. How long has it been since I've seen you? I came over when Everly was just recently born.
House we're in now. Yeah. It's been a year and a half we've been there.
That's gross.
I know.
And rude, but we're so busy.
I know. We have, we got children.
Well, you have children.
I have children. And we have careers.
I know.
Well, you have a career.
You have a career too. I know so much has changed, but I was telling these guys before we were going to start that we met in the most auspicious of ways. That to me is still one of my most favorite ways I've ever met anybody in my life.
Even when you came over to our apartment after I met you,
yeah.
I was like, I can't believe this actually happened. Because people say like, we should hang out. Sure, we'll exchange numbers. Never happens.
But we met at a fondue party, which sounds super 70s. We met at a key party.
Exactly.
We did. It was Greg Jabaras.
Yeah. And we were leaving and you were coming and we
Yeah.
met at the door and you said, "Where are you going?"
Yeah.
I
I was
was
just
like,
so into you. And
Yeah.
you were with somebody at the time.
Yeah. My
And
ex-husband.
Your ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
We're
That you
gonna-
married us.
Twice. But this is not your current husband.
Nope.
You do much better when
I'm
I
very-
don't officiate your wedding.
No, but I'm very marriable. That's what we
You are.
learned.
You are very marriable. But I saw you coming in. I don't know. It was a soul connection thing. I just knew. I didn't even live in LA at that time. I was just out here visiting.
Which is crazy.
Also crazy. And even crazier, you know this though. I met Greg Jabara, wonderful actor. I don't know what he's doing right now, but
Me neither.
hope he's okay and well. I met him in an AOL chat room.
No.
Yes. Did you not know that?
No, I did not know that.
I met him in like a Broadway, because he's a Broadway guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I met him in a Broadway chat room. And like nothing pervy at all because he was married.
What
right?
a theater nerd you
But
are.
I was such a theater nerd. Like those were the chat rooms I was in on AOL.
Oh my God.
But then I was like wanting to move to LA. I lived in Indianapolis and he was like, come on out. And clearly I did. I was in LA.
It's also crazy. Also, the thing about us meeting, you saw the movie Arrival?
Yeah.
It kind of was like we saw our future together.
Yeah.
It was like, oh.
And I stuck around for it.
Yeah.
No, but really, I think about like, I didn't know anybody. I was staying by the.
Spoiler alert, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen Arrival, I just ruined it for you.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
too bad. Sorry. I didn't know anybody. I was super ballsy. I mean, I'm still ballsy, but I was really ballsy back then. Like, I just was like, this land is for me to conquer out here in Hollywood.
yeah.
I'm going to this fondue party with this dude I met online. I didn't have one doubt that it would be weird. Nothing.
And by the way, it felt like you were already here. It felt like you
know.
had known them forever. You had been there forever. All that.
It just all clicked. That party was so interesting because it was also pre-cell phone, really kind of pre-cell phone-ish.
Oh, right,
It was at
yeah.
least 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, we might have had like a flip phone, but I wasn't living on it.
And I wasn't texting.
No.
No.
We might have been having a pager or something. But you know what? It was just a time where you like did what you said you were going to do. So you said, you should come over to our apartment. And I was like,
I know.
Hi.
And I don't even think we had a lot of furniture then.
you didn't.
We were like brand new.
But you were also transplanted here at that time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We moved in July of 2000.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it was
Yeah.
20 years ago almost.
Holy shit. It's crazy.
So what's happened in those 20 years? Let's see. You've had 3 weddings. I've
Yes.
had 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Michael and I have been through a lot of shit together. I had one hugely bad breakup in which most of my apartment was in my car, remember? And
I
we
remember.
went to Marianne Williamson, saved my life
I
during
took you.
that time.
I was like, let's go, girl.
Would not vote for her for president, but was
No.
happy I went to the
It was great when she was doing Course of Miracles.
But and we've seen each other through all these like amazing transformations. That's what I wanted. I mean, first of all, I wanted to catch up with you, and I knew if I promised you cameras, you would come. Just kidding. Kind of.
I had a reel today. I was like, I gotta look good.
I know.
Because now I'm behind the camera. So I don't have to look
know.
good anymore.
Well, let's talk about that. Well, first of all, I want to talk about your upbringing because I
Yes.
want to start with our origin stories.
Yeah.
You were born where?
Wilmington, Delaware,
And do you know
1972.
okay, and do you know anything about your birth story? Because you're
A
one of
little
how
bit.
many?
I'm the last of 6.
Right.
But I'm the only one for my 2 parents. My parents were married before. My dad had 4 kids. My mom
Right.
had 1.
Okay.
My dad was 45 when he had me, which back in the 70s, that was old as fuck.
Yeah.
Right? Although I was like 47 when I had Bowie. So,
It's in the genes.
but now it's young.
So young.
Super young. And then my mom was 38,
Wow.
which was very old
That's
back
also
then.
old, yeah.
And my mom started hemorrhaging right after I was born
Oh my
and had to
God.
have a hysterectomy.
After she gave birth to you?
Yes.
Were you a C-section? Because
No.
she was a natural birth?
Yes.
And then she had a hysterectomy?
Yeah.
Your mom is a saint.
I know. Well,
Kind of. We'll get into that.
rest her soul. But I was the only one from the 2 of them. So I was the love child.
Yeah.
And there was a 9-year difference between me and the next oldest, and then a 20-year span between all of us.
And your brother was the first, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
2
incredible.
2 brothers, then one of my sisters, then all 3 of my sisters,
And then you
and then me.
coming up the rear.
Yeah. Take it easy. We don't. That's
We
inappropriate.
just This one really blew really fast. But with you, you bring that part out of me a little bit. So do you does your mom tell a story about that experience? Like, did she tell the story of I gave birth to Michael and then they took out all my lady parts right afterwards?
No, it kind of came out later. My mom was really complicated. She was now you'd say bipolar, but back then they said manic depressive.
Right.
And she was in and out of hospitals and medicated, and there was some rough times with us.
Was she underdiagnosed, do you think? Or just misdiagnosed, or just not diagnosed at that time?
She was diagnosed.
Oh.
She was diagnosed, but I think that she, like many people that, have manic depression or bipolar disorder, you can either be on the medication or you cannot be on the medication. If you're on the medication, it sometimes helps, but if you're not, it's definitely not helping.
Right.
And she was seeing a psychiatrist, and she was just going on and off her meds whenever she wanted. And at one point, this is one of the stories I love to tell. So came home from school. I was a latchkey kid, so I would be home for a couple hours by myself. And the neighbor called out of the blue and was like, "Hey, Michael, it's Yvonne from next door." I was like, "Okay, why is she?"
Everybody had a neighbor named Yvonne in the 80s anyway.
Right? Yes, it's so true.
Yvonne and Doug. Usually.
Yeah. And so she was like, what are you doing right now? I was like, "I'm doing my homework." She said, "Why don't you come over here and do your homework?" Which is first of all, she lives the next house over. She could have just come over. I don't know why she's calling. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm hang up the phone. As I'm hanging up my phone, my mother comes in and what I call a flurry of scarves, just whoosh. And she's like, "Who are you talking to?" And I was like, I'm talking to Yvonne. And she's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, she told me to come over and do my homework there." "Why?" I was like, "I don't know." And she goes, "Well, get your stuff. We're leaving." First of all, I'm 8. So what stuff am I getting? Okay.
And where are you going?
Well, I don't know. And as she heads off into the room, there's this knock on the door, and it's the police. And my mother's like, "Oh," so, she's upset. There's as she goes to the front, it's my cousin who's a cop, is like, "Aunt Dottie, it's Bob." And then as she's saying that, police are coming in the back door.
Up.
And she had been to her psychiatrist, and she had said, "I'm going to kill myself and Michael," and then left his office. So he had to call the police.
Oh, my God, Michael.
And so I guess the police, or I don't know who called Yvonne. First of all, if a woman says, "I'm going to kill myself and my kid," and you're your neighbor, get your ass over to my house and get me.
Don't call the phone.
Don't call. Come over. But she called.
Maybe she was trying to keep everything calm.
Maybe.
I don't know. Who cares?
She
what
literally
the fuck,
lived
Yvonne?
our neighbor, our backyard.
You come over. Have a little urgency, Yvonne.
Come over.
Right.
Anyway, she ended up saving her ass later, which I'll tell you about.
Wait, so is this a normal occurrence with your mom? That extreme? Or she was just in one of those episodes where...
This was the most extreme. That's the only time that ever happened. But she definitely had attempted suicides before. She'd been hospitalized before. My father was a rageaholic, and so he would she would take pills, and he would although this isn't rage, he would sometimes just flip the table because he was just upset one night, or my sister said something, he would just turn the dining room table over and put a chair so the leg went into the wall.
Oh my God.
But sometimes my mother would take pills, or said she took pills, and he would knock down her door, and for years and years and years the framing on her door was broken because he busted through the door one time in one of her episodes.
Shit.
And so
did you know what was happening when you were 8? Did they you knew then that she was that she had said
No.
that? They didn't tell you that.
No, she was emotional. But by the way, you rise to the level of the water. So this was what it was
normal.
This was normal. And they also my dad was Italian, and just people were loud, and they told stories, and then they would tell stories all the time, my parents, about basically abusing my brothers and sisters. They'd be like, "Your brother came home one night and he was so drunk." My father would be like, "I grabbed him by the feet and dragged him down the stairs. His head hit every stair."
Oh my God.
We had wooden stairs. They weren't carpeted. He could have broken his neck. But it's and people laugh. He's like, "Oh, he never did that again." And they're, they're laughing while drinking their coffee. Or it's "Oh, one time Michael, he wouldn't go to bed. He kept on jumping out of bed, and I beat his ass so hard. His legs were coming up off the ground. And he'd come back out and say, 'Hi, Dad.' And my mom would be like, 'Oh, Mike, it was so terrible. We were crying. We were praying he'd stay in bed.'" And they're laughing. And by the way, and as a kid, I laughed too. I thought they were hilarious. Until one day I was like,
"Oh my God."
"Oh no, they were crying. And they were praying."
Right.
I stayed in bed.
Right.
It was for real. Wow. But like, it was just my childhood.
Right.
And it wasn't until years and years and years later, I was telling one of these stories to Krista Vernoff.
Yeah. I
went to BU with. And this is before I worked there in Grays. And she was, one time she said, Michael, this isn't funny.
Right.
And I was like, no, it is. She goes, no. This is, you've thought this was funny because it's been presented to you as funny for all these years. This is abuse.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever even consider that. Although that's not sort of true, because there was a time after college where my parents were telling the story one time, and I said, stop telling the story.
It's not
That's
funny.
not funny. But then like you...
But isn't that so incredible? Like our families, and this is something I'm sure you and Brian are aware of in raising your kids now, like we implant these sorts of stories and narratives in our kids super early.
Yeah.
And like that was what you were told, the story you were told, the experience you have. And I love that you said we rise to the level of what's going on. But I also think most traumatized kids do that.
Sure.
We just adapt.
Yeah.
Because it's survival. What else are you going to be thinking during that time?
Well, you either survive or you do the opposite.
Correct.
You know?
Right.
So, but yeah. And by the way, my brothers and sisters sort of did do the opposite.
Which is what?
A lot of them. Well, God, Jesus, I just realized this is like on a platform that...
Well, you don't have to say anything.
Well, no, I'll just say that there's been medication happening with drugs and alcohol throughout their lives.
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I get that. Well, you're going to numb it or you're going to face it.
Yeah, totally.
Nobody wants to face it.
And
it's
they had it a lot
shit.
worse than I did because I was young enough that I didn't exactly remember or know. They were like, first of all, the 4 kids that were my dad's kids lost their mother. She died of cancer.
Wow.
She didn't die of cancer. She died, I think, of a brain aneurysm, but it was fast and it was terrible. And so, my one sister was 3 years old, so she didn't have a. Then she comes to my house with my mother, who's, bipolar, and my father's a rageaholic, and it's just like they are imprinted. They are imprinted.
Right.
I didn't get that as much, although I do live with the fear of God raising kids now.
You do?
Just because I just know that everything kids see and notice everything.
But don't you think if you're at least having these conscious thoughts, it will change the course of your parenting? I don't know if our parents had those conscious thoughts.
I don't think they did. I don't think they did.
So I even think somehow like having the thought already gets you on the other side of repeating that parenting pattern.
I think so. I hope. Well, God, I hope
think so.
I hope.
You're aware of it. Can you imagine if our parents were more aware of their real deeper issues? I mean, maybe we wouldn't have all been so fucked up so often. If you could think of 3 words, now hearing that story, I'm really curious about this question. 3 words that described your childhood off the top of your head.
Innocent, joyous, and resilient.
So innocent is interesting based on that story. Tell me about that. Like, what is that?
There is a real weird innocence about me, even to this day.
Yeah, you're a curious guy.
And it takes me a while to really... It's interesting. As a director, I get things right away, and I can empathize and I know exactly what a story is about. But sometimes in my own life, there's this childhood, innocent exploration and surprise of life.
But don't you think that's part of you being an artist too? That discovery process?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's what makes. I just think that's what makes artists sort of universal in that way. This kind of curiosity and innocence to create, because it doesn't exist all the time what we're creating.
And I also am not a pessimist. So I don't look for the negative, and then when I find it, be like, well, of course, I kind of just look for the positive. So I think sometimes when negative things happen, I'm like, oh. like
those are possible.
I didn't see that coming. Or I didn't expect that, or whatever.
What is the joyous part of childhood that you remember?
I loved to sing. I would get on that little swing set of mine, that little rickety old swing set that was mostly rusted, and just sing my face off. Those poor neighbors.
What would you sing?
Annie.
Of course. What would you start with?
Maybe far away.
Were you Annie all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Were you never Miss Hannigan?
No, girl.
Girl, I was typecast as Miss Hannigan
You
early
were.
on. Yes.
You were in your power.
No, I think also that fucked me up too, because of course I wanted to be Annie. They're like, you have the energy of Miss Hannigan.
Oh,
rude. I wrote a
you
book
can
about
go
it. It's
fuck
fine.
off.
You could go fuck off.
Is it called that? Is that your book? You can go
fuck
fuck right off.
First, we're all going to die anyway, and then you can go fuck off. So Annie, and then what else would you sing?
Gosh. Later was Pippin. Oh, Sound of Music for sure.
Dun 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 the sun, Pippin.
Yeah. Oh God, I love that. That was more high school. When I was younger, it was definitely Sound of Music, Heat Miser from the Rudolph special. Remember that song?
I don't know that. I'm
I
Jewish.
missed.
I didn't watch
Fair
the
enough.
Rudolph specials.
enough.
Tell me, what is that song of which
Rudolph,
you speak?
I don't think Rudolph is actually.
Always came up to, no, it's not. He's not really.
Do you think he's
religious.
non-denominational, isn't he? I think he goes to Unity Church, actually.
He probably does. What is that song though? I don't know that song.
I'm Mr. Heat Miser. I'm Mr. Sun. I'm Mr. Heat Miser. I'm Mr. 101. By the way, you're not going to be able to play that because you got to get the rights for it properly. Yeah.
Oh, Hollywood. Okay, so it was joyous, innocent, and what was the
Resilient.
third? And resilient. Well,
Yeah.
resilient.
Yeah.
Which actually does describe you really well.
Yeah.
Honestly, no, when I think about all the different things we've navigated through, I mean, at least the things that we know of each other, the things we've experienced together, ends of relationships, parents passing, relatives passing, friends passing, like changes of careers. I mean, this is really why I wanted you to be on this show. And it's funny because I even made this show mostly because I just wanted to go deeper into the conversations I think come up in midlife. The place where we don't often get a chance to talk about, like, let's slow down and be like, holy fuck, we're at this age and stage. We've all made different life choices. We all start the same way we're born. We all end the same way we die. We all, the beginning and ending of the story never changes. But like all of that journey in between is what we do with it. So,
and what's it, and really also, what's it for?
Right.
I've really been thinking a lot recently, like, we're on this planet, a blip.
Yeah.
A second.
Yeah.
And every moment of our lives are so important. Oh my God, am I going to get that parking spot?
Right.
It's like, what is it? But it is so fucking important.
I know.
And I don't even mean to take away the importance of getting that parking spot.
Yeah.
But it's not like, doesn't mean anything.
Not in the big picture.
No. And I have this real, I am spiritual, and yet I'm not at all. I'm as unenlightened as the next person. But I do have moments where I do get sort of big picture-y, and I do think like, even with diseases that, I'm like, this is Earth's natural selection. And then I'm like, oh, until it like affects someone that I know.
Right.
Then it becomes super, super personal.
Right.
But I feel the same way about death a lot of times.
You do.
I mean, when even people that I know are dying, are going to die, or my aunt is in hospice right now, and I'm like, okay.
Whose sister?
It's my father's sister.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm ready for her, and she's ready. She's been in a nursing home with dementia for 7 years, and that's how long my mom was in nursing home.
I remember that.
My dad was in nursing home for 4 or 5 years with dementia. And there's a time in which, when they're not able to feed themselves and they're incontinent
horrible.
and they can't speak, and then my mother broke her hip and she couldn't move. I'm like, well, this is a trap.
Yeah.
This body is now a trap.
Does that worry you, the dementia in your family?
It does.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
without trying to plug something, I'm reading this great book right now.
Are you? Tell me.
It's called Genius Foods by
Okay.
Max, I think his name is Lugavere or something like that. And it's basically his mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she got Alzheimer's from it, because it's Parkinson's and Alzheimer's go hand in hand, because it's, brain degenerative.
Yeah.
And she was in her late 50s, and he was like, why is there an upswing in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's in the past 30 years? Why is there a huge upswing in America? There's no one in my family that's had this. They keep on saying it's genetic. And he's like, there's got to be, something cultural. So he starts looking at the food that we're eating, and he's like, this food is poison. So much of it's poison. And so just like talking about how to bring our bodies back to wholeness.
What are some of the components of that?
Just the idea that any oil besides like olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil are basically like, we might as well be drinking crude oil. It's like sunflower oil and corn oil and vegetable oil and
that's saturated.
And the fact that it's like it's in everything and it's so overly processed that and he breaks it down with a doctor like specifically what it does to your body. So he talks about that. He talks about the idea of not just like gluten just as a whole, but just like grains. Like what are the real purpose of grains in our lives?
Right.
You know, this whole, remember back in the 70s, like the no fat diet and all that?
Of course, yeah.
He's like, that was the sugar industry. That was the sugar industry behind it.
Because then they pumped a bunch of sugar into foods.
Yeah, to make them taste good.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, basically eating chemicals.
1,000 times.
Yeah.
And he goes, and on top of that, like your brain is 80% fat. It needs fat. And in fact, our bodies need cholesterol as well. And there's no proven thing that eating cholesterol adds to higher cholesterol. And he just breaks all these studies down.
It's called Genius Foods?
Yeah.
I really do. My mom's brother, my uncle is currently in a nursing home with dementia or has Parkinson's. And I think now is having some dementia. And I think my grandmother had it, although I think it was undiagnosed and it was kind of comorbid with other kinds of issues. But to
senility.
Senility, yes,
Back
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But then also you go to a hospital when you're older, you just die there because there's so much gross stuff happening there too. But I think about that for me, and I say this to Felipe all the time, it's like my absolute worst fear is to lose my mind and my ability to be able to communicate. But I've known now so many people who've watched their loved ones go through that, and it's torture.
Yeah.
Or it sounds like torture.
It is. There is there's a peace and there's a presence that you can also get from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I see other family members with their family being like, it's me, hi mom, it's me, it's, you know, they want recognition. They want to like make that connection. Yeah. Brian's father has Parkinson's and a little bit of senility, Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
It's not exactly labeled yet, but it's sort of, you know, he goes in these wild fantasies where we'll go visit him and we'll have like literally in like 45 minutes of a plane ride with him where he's like telling us to dump. I mean, it is so specific and so clear. And he used to fly planes, and we just go along with the ride. He's like, okay, dump the stuff off the back, and we're dumping things out of the back of the plane, and you know, and then with my mom, she didn't recognize me or even mention my name for probably 2 years-ish. And I went to go visit her, and I decided that every time I went, I would only be able to spend like 15 minutes because I was so trying to interact with her and trying to like maximize the time because I had flown 3,000 miles to see her, and I try to see her every day while I was there, but I was trying to interact with her so much, and I wasn't getting a lot. And
interact with her in the way you used to, or you had been. Yeah.
Or like sometimes I would just try to feed her, but just try to talk to her or whatever. And then I thought, well, what if I just go and just be with her and just sit with her? And if she doesn't want to talk, don't. Okay. Or maybe she has something to say that I'm just talking too much, or who knows. So I went there and she was talking about something. At this point, she was very fragmented conversation. So it'd be a lot of gibberish. And every once in a while, she'd say, well, you know, she was the best. And I was like, okay. And then gibberish. And she goes, well, you know, the Medico there is really good. And I'm like, okay. And she took a picture. And I said, okay. And she goes, yeah. And I asked for a copy, and then more gibberish. And then after about an hour, I'm like, she's talking about her x-ray she had today. She had an x-ray at a medical place, and a woman and I was like, she's never actually, I mean, if you spend 15 minutes trying to get someone to talk to you.
Right.
But like suddenly I was able to Nancy Drew it together. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So then the next day I went to go see her and had the same thing. I'm just going to sit here and nothing. I was like, okay, well, that big.
It didn't turn out like the movie in your head.
Out the same
right?
way. And then on the third day, I was sitting with her, and I was just being with her, and all of a sudden I had been with her for about 20 minutes, and she looked at me and she said, it was like a window opened, and she goes, Michael, and saw me and was shocked. And I was like, yeah, Mom, it's me. I'm here. She goes, oh, I know it's you. And I've known you've been here. How long are you here for? And I said, I'm going to leave fairly soon. She goes, well, are you seeing anyone else? I said, yeah, I'm going to go see the Drewliners. She goes, the Stewliners? By the way, the Drewliners were a family that we grew up with. She knows very well. And I said, no, the Drewliners. She goes, the Two-liners. I said, no, the Drewliners. She goes, I don't know them. I said, yes, you know Andrew. She goes, I know Andrew. Well, when are you going? I said, well, I'm going to actually leave pretty soon. And she crossed her arms and got pissed at me. And it was so my mother. It was so my mother. And as she crossed arms and got pissed at me and sort of turned away, she generally just softened and then she was just gone again. Wow. And it was like, that's the last conversation I had with her. But also I hadn't spoken to her like that
in so long.
And I thought, God, she is still in there.
Right.
There just are missed connections. There's connections in the brain that are being missed. There's connections from her brain to her mouth that are being missed. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that she's not there.
Yeah.
Gosh. But how great to be able to have that experience.
I know. And does she know about, when did she pass?
She passed a year and a half ago. So she did meet
She
Ever.
knew Everly.
Yeah. And I took Ever to go meet her and I put Ever in her lap and she was holding her and she kissed her, which was very sweet because
yeah, of course.
She could be kissing a doll baby. She didn't know, but she definitely had the instinct. And then the next day, I had went to go see her, and she said, "Gibberish, don't do that." And I was like, "Okay." And it was too much. And I don't know what she was talking about, but she definitely had she never had taken that tone with me before, and maybe it was like putting a heavy baby in her lap. Who knows? Right. But it was. I was like, okay.
Dang. When you think about the childhood you've had now and the adult you've formed into, what is a big takeaway that you think about your childhood, like a way that you think about it now that you didn't think about it before?
For the longest time, I felt like such a victim of my childhood. And so for the first part of my life, I was like, I had a great childhood. It was amazing. And I'm resilient and incredible. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that stuff was fucked up. Wait a minute. And then I was like, oh, poor me. I had a bad childhood. And then I read another book called David and Goliath by...
oh, that sounds good.
Who wrote The Turning Point? You know him.
I don't know.
Anyway.
The Tipping Point or The Turning Point?
Tipping Point.
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote this other book. And it's just about how people that have, quote unquote, handicaps or things that are, whether it be a learning disability or dyslexia or whatever, that some people actually rise above it by learning other skills to get around it.
Yeah.
And that your biggest hurdle in life could actually become your biggest success because of it. And I was like, that's very, very true for me. And I think that my mom, I would be able to gauge, she would call before she came home every night. And I could tell by how she was talking to the phone, her tone, whether she was going to come in crazy or calm. Right. And I would get off the phone, and because of that, I would work out how much does the house have to be cleaned? How much homework do I have to have done? Does it have to look good? So I think I learned acting skills back then.
Yep.
But also really directing. I was able to judge a situation, read the room.
Interesting.
Set the tone. Manage. It was really codependent.
Yeah.
But that codependence turned into a super skill.
This is so interesting. I literally, in almost every conversation I'm having on this show, either this is a through line in the people I know and love, because we all share similar, different scenarios, but similar packing when we were little. But I just had a conversation with somebody who said almost verbatim what you said, that part of her traumatized childhood, she was born to teenage parents who were kind of into drugs and partying and not super responsible at home. So some of that instability. Yeah. And that trauma formed her to be incredibly anticipatory of people's needs, to read the room, and it made her successful in business because of that. And I think if we think about all the artists we know and all these high-functioning, successful people, there is a part, I'm going to generalize this, but what I'm finding and also finding true about myself is that you're exactly right. Those things that were so wounding as a kid and deserve to have that process of, poor me, I didn't want that fucking childhood, and also now realizing... right? What didn't kill me did make me stronger. And that this is a big part of what I can give to the world. But for me, it made me that people pleaser part of me, that anticipatory part of wanting to be everything to everybody, because that meant I was worth something and I could attach to people in that way. I mean, that guided me in most of my career. I think, honestly, up until recently. Yeah. That I'm having understandings that is a non-sustainable way of living.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also because In terms of the codependence?
In terms of the codependence, yes, about putting worth and value on everything else, on a job, on a person, on a reaction, and not your own experience. Because I think when we grew up with parents who weren't able, I'll just speak for me. When I grew up with parents that I didn't feel like were able to meet my needs in a way that are developmentally healthy and functional, I developed ways to get those needs met. Yeah. And as I have grown as an adult, some of those things have caused me to have great success in life because we value those things in this culture too. Yeah. And especially, I'll speak for me as a woman, being people pleasing, being sort of a shapeshifter, being who you want me to be, like that's paid off. Totally. In a lot of ways, but it's depleted like me in my life. And
but what's interesting is that if we talk about like as a disease, we can cure the disease of putting other people first, the disease of, changing ourselves. Like if you're okay, then I'm okay. That if we get rid of that whole stuff, but some of the symptoms of it are actually still very helpful. Like I have an attention to detail that is so sharp. I don't even think twice about it, but now living with my husband, like he loses his keys every day, loses his phone every day, can't find this, can't find that. And
Are we both married to Felipe?
Your husband's name's Felipe too? But I have like almost a photographic memory of like where things are. I come in, I see things. He won't put the milk away. Or if I say, like, can you put the milk away? He puts it away without the cap on. Who puts the milk away without the cap on?
Brian and Felipe.
Right. And Felipe. Maybe they should be together.
So.
Okay, good.
All right. We figured that out.
That's good. Thank God. But I have, and also being able to read the room is a great symptom, which is still great to like if you feel the tone switch or you're just like,
you can feel like micro nuances all over the place.
1,000 times.
I know. Well, now we can turn that into our advantage. I'm going to read David and Goliath.
It's great.
After I read Genius Foods.
Read them all. Read it all.
So let's talk about like the journey that you've been on professionally then in that way, because when I met you at the fondue party in 1977, when we met for the first, obviously acting was a predominant part of your journey.
That's all I was doing at the
time.
And
you've literally been in every commercial we've ever seen ever. You've had lots of families.
I have had
You've driven lots of cars.
Yep.
Have you ever done a Viagra ad?
No, I did do a Xeljanz ad, which was for psoriasis.
Oh, how is that going?
I think it was for psoriasis.
You don't need to.
I didn't have it. My wife had it. I was just a supportive husband.
You're a supportive husband?
Yeah.
It would just trip me out to see you with all your various children and wives.
I know, seriously. By the way, one of them is Noah Centineo. Noah Centineo
played from To All the Boys?
Yeah.
He was one of your children?
He played my son in 5 Old Navy spots. And we were up in San Francisco shooting it for like a week. And then it was before he got on the Fosters. Then he got on the Fosters. And then I directed him on the Fosters.
I forgot he was on the Fosters.
Yeah. We still talk.
Aw, that's amazing. Well, you must be a very proud daddy.
I am a proud daddy. I am.
So tell me about like this transition now, because I think in all of your journeying, you had great success. Did you feel like you had great success?
I did. As an actor? I mean, I had a couple of years that were incredible for me in terms of like monetarily.
Okay.
And I always did enough commercials to pay the bills. So I was a working actor.
Yeah, you were.
And I always looked at commercials as if it was really acting. It's never just like bite and smile. I really approached it as a real actor, but it was never like quite fulfilling. And so, but I'd always get enough small parts on TV shows and whatever.
Yeah.
But it was never quite fulfilling. I came from theater. I was doing like the great Shakespeare roles before, and it was just so much to sink your teeth into. And suddenly I wasn't having that.
No, you're driving a minivan with your kids
and sinking my teeth into a hamburger.
Right.
So there was something missing, and all my friends were like killing it. They were like getting the TV shows and getting huge films. And even though in this business, there's always a little bit of unhappiness no matter what happens. Like you could be getting the best supporting actor Oscar and be like, well, it's just not best actor.
Right.
You're like, okay, take it easy.
Right.
But that's sort of the business. It's always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And that's not just about actors. It's about writers, directors, everyone. You're always looking for the next thing, and so it's hard to be present. And so,
did you have a vision of what you wanted to be doing here?
You mean how did I get into directing?
No, not the directing part. I want to get to that. But I meant like as an actor, you come from doing theater, you're here in Hollywood, you're doing the commercials, but did you want the series? Did you want the film?
I did. Because I thought that like being a lead in a film or a lead in a TV show, that would bring the happiness.
I know.
Isn't that the dream?
For some.
I mean, I think that's what we're told.
Right. Yeah. It is what we're told.
And the big joke around town, which is not that funny, but it does ring true a little bit. It's like, how do you make an actor unhappy? Give him a job. It's true for directors too. Yeah. I've been like, I can't wait to get a job. I really want a job. When you get the job, you're like, I got the job. And then you get the job and you're like, oh God, I got to do this job. It's hard, but particularly in front of the camera, because you have to deal with all different kinds of people that don't respect your space. I mean, I actually have such a humongous affinity and respect and love for actors that goes also into sort of like, they get treated like shit. And we think like, oh, they make lots of money and they're like, get lots of, it's hard. Yeah. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And they have to like reveal their soul while like 10 seconds before people are touching the hair and making them look good and make sure your
somebody's
shirt's
talking to you about lunch and this and that. Like,
And then you got to like turn it on, and then you're supposed to be like so revealed and have all of your emotions pouring out of you. But the minute they say cut, you're supposed to be a good little actor and go back to your cage.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, I make your sometimes terrible writing, sometimes your terrible direction, sometimes your whatever. Right. Sing, I'll win you awards because I'm an open book, because I'm allowing so I can't just shut it down. Like I am.
So now think about that. But I think about that all the time now when I work with young actors, as I know you do on some of the shows that you're directing. And I have come into the studios and networks for a while and done these sort of talent training programs that aren't really about them as actors. They're about them as people. It's reminding them that they're people. Because when you're a young person and then doing that, I can't even imagine doing that at 14 or 16.
Well, it's not only that. So you have to when they say role, you've got to be like amazing and be a great actor.
Right.
You have to also like be a professional and like wake up early and show up on set. And if you're a young person, you have to go to classes during the day and still keep up with school. But then you have to like be on the red carpet and look amazing. Right. Whatever that version is to you. But
or your team.
Or your team. But then they ask you questions and you have to be so eloquent about everything. Right. You have to be able to say in one sentence exactly the encapsulation of all your feelings, and people ask you stupid things and you're supposed to be like witty and great, and that's 7 different careers.
I know.
How do they do that?
And some of them don't do it well, and they combust because you also like, I couldn't imagine. I mean, I even think even outside of acting, I mean, I think about this whole influencer world's gone fucking mad. It's like the performative nature of our world is bananas. Mm-hmm. I mean, even as actors growing up, even theater actors, right? You know, those theater kids, we were them. We're super annoying and we're always on and we're always like, even to, we're like, da da da. But now I think about
sang
like,
2 songs.
We did. We're only like a half an hour in. But now I think about, like the audience, like, you had to like find the audience. It was like your parents and their friends in the living room, or like, your friends at school. Yeah. Now, literally with our phone, we pick it up and you've got this like worldwide audience at beck and command, beck and call. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. But I think about
at
like
your command,
and
beck and call,
and not up the rear.
Yes.
Okay. Come bringing up the rear. I'm
let that go.
I'm not. Okay. But like, I think about how we've been trained, and this group has been trained to break the fourth wall all the time. And so they're constantly talking to somebody. I don't know who's there. Like, who are they really talking to?
Right.
Everyone who influences is always doing this. Hey guys, a lot of you have asked me about, nobody's fucking asked you anything. I want to do an influencer series, like the phony influencer. I'll be like, hey guys, nobody's ever asked me about because I don't think people, we pretend all the time now, and it's a currency of how we connect to each other.
Yeah. What's crazy is that, we're on Instagram together.
Yes.
And not together, but we see each other. I see you on the gram. And I post pictures of my kids. I post pictures of my career.
Yep.
It's like really a slice of my life as much as it can be. And for fun. And most of the time it's friends and family, but a couple of celebrities have like interacted with me, or I've worked with, or posted some things, and I've gotten like a shit ton of followers suddenly that like I don't know, which is like, you want numbers, right? I mean, people want numbers, but I hate it. It's so weird because people will make comments and I'm like, who's that? I don't know that person.
Right.
What?
But they think they know you.
Yeah. And I am putting my life out on a social.
Yeah.
It's not private.
Did you and Brian talk about that, about putting the pics up of the kids?
No, I've had other people talk to me about it, but I was always like, it's just our friends and family. And then suddenly it's not. So, yeah, it's weird.
It's an interesting thing because I wonder too when kids get older and they look at this, if your mom or your dad would have put you out in that way, would you at some point been like happy about it? Or
well, I was a theater kid.
Yeah, you would have loved it. You would have been like
yeah, like I didn't have photo approval of that, but it's okay. It was cute. It's getting a lot of likes.
Your kids are really flipping cute though.
I know, it's crazy.
I mean, okay, you became a dad. Let's just talk about that part.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I know, because I'm a child still.
I know.
I'm a 48-year-old child.
I know. Oh, we all are. But you became a daddy to two. So what fundamentally changes in your brain? I mean, out of many, many things, but like what's the big thing at this stage of your parenting cycle right now are you thinking about?
Well, you're always thinking about them even when you're with them or not. So even if I wasn't talking to you about them, they still take up a place in my brain. And look, before I had kids, I was like, should we go to Starbucks or the Coffee Bean? Oh, the Coffee Bean does have that Black Forest. It's too many calories. I should not do. Starbucks over. We should go to a local place. Do we even go to a local place? We should probably dinosaur coffee or like who the fuck has time for that now? Oh my God! Like I came here today. I was like, did I brush my teeth? Yeah. I don't even know if I brushed my teeth.
Questions.
I don't know.
Just in case you're wondering.
Good thing we're farther away. We might have to spray this down afterwards.
They occupy a huge part of it.
And also, I was an actor before, so I had lots of time in between auditions. Yep. And I would tell my friends all the time. They're like, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "Oh, I got the craziest day today. I've got to go work out, and then I got coffee with my friend Jess, and then I got acting class, and then I'm gonna go do a yoga thing probably if I can get there on time, and then I got dinner with my friend Sam." And they'd be like, "Oh, okay, that sounds busy." I'm like, "I'm really busy." Did
you hate people who had kids though when you didn't have kids?
Well, also my friends Maggie and Michael. They dropped off. I remember. And I was like, you know what? I was so angry with them. I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna bother calling them anymore. They can't do anything anymore. But I was just telling you before we were on camera is that like if I have a moment, if my kids are like off at school or whatever, and I have a moment to myself, I may want that moment to myself.
Right.
Like, I got shit I got to do for my career, yes, and for our house and for our dogs and for whatever. But then it's like, no, I might need a second just to I don't know that I want to be hanging out with somebody.
Yeah. Or you get more selective about how you spend your time.
Yes. Yeah. You totally do. Yeah. Or even people that you really, really love and you want to see. You're like, I just need a second.
Yeah.
I just need a second,
That's why I love you even when we don't see each other. And I mean this truthfully, because in that one moment you were saying that, I'm like, is that why Michael hasn't seen me these past 2 years?
I don't want to be friends with you anymore.
Okay. Is this where you're coming to break up with me and our friendship?
But this is going to be a really good podcast.
It's our sweeps episode. The one in which Michael breaks my heart. We're all going to die anyway.
Ding.
No, but I was thinking that some of the best friendships that I have in my life are just the ones that have, first of all, they span decades, which we've now done. And at some moments, we've been tracking in life at the same time and same space. And then sometimes, it gets farther apart, right? Yeah. Like it happens, I think, at the stage and place where people get married or they couple up. And then certainly it happens when careers change and when, kids happen. And I've noticed that, I think, in our life because we're choosing not to have kids. And like that makes a different lifestyle choice. In some ways, we're more available and open. And then in other ways, like as far as like spending time and being available, like to be there, I think, to be there for your kids or to be there for any of the kids in our life. But I think the other part of it is it's also really weird and isolating and bizarre to be at different life stages with people that you've known and loved for a long time because you're not sharing in those same things anymore.
Yeah. And also when you call me when you're going through your breakup, and I was like, come to Marianne Williamson with me, I was single.
That's right.
And it was like, if I wasn't single, I might not have been going to Marianne Williamson.
Right.
And I might not have been available. Like it was a
know.
perfect moment
I know.
of like synergy, of like coming together.
And then it gets complicated. And I think as you get older too, I just have a lot of respect for those boundaries. Like we have different priorities in our life and we're working on different things, but I never ever doubt that I love you or that you love me or that you wish the best for me or vice versa. I just think that's maturity in a relationship.
Let me just then segue into something I really want to talk about today.
What?
I'm going through a thing right now. I'm going through a real thing that's like really, it's hard on me. So I have a friend who, I won't mention names,
okay,
who I've known for years and years and years and years and years, college together.
Okay.
And she's always been like a funny, shitty friend. Like when we hang out, it's always like, she lives in New York, after I see her, like text and calls and it's whatever, and then it gets less and less and less, and then you cannot get her on the phone, no matter what. And she's got 2 kids, and it's funny also because it was always before I had kids that I would go to New York and I'd be like, oh, we're just hanging out, just the 2 of us, right? And her husband would take care of the boys, and like I'd barely interact with the boys at all. And she, he would always make it okay that she could run off and have her time with me. And anyway, so I'm really, now that I've got kids, I'm like, oh, that was fucked up. Like I barely interacted with those kids. Like I just was like, oh, you're just going to be with me, right? And it wasn't even until after I even had kids, I even realized her husband was doing what he was doing.
Right.
Like putting in the time so that she could have time with me or whatever. Anyway, so I basically got ghosted.
You got ghosted?
Yeah. She basically like just stopped talking to me. And I've reached out and reached out and reached out and reached out. And by the way, that was an old pattern. One time I even said to her, I was like, I'm going to call you every single day
until you call me back.
And this was like years and years and years ago.
Wow.
But like this one's been more serious. And I mean, like, I've like sent
This
texts
is recently?
the past year.
Okay.
It's been like about a year now. And I then called her husband. And I was like, hey, is everything, I mean, I hope to God everything's okay.
Course.
Is everything okay? I didn't hear back from him. And I'm like, holy shit. And this is someone that...
Do you know if they're still alive?
Well, their son
Okay.
follows me on Instagram, and I see his post, and he seems like he's living a very happy life.
Okay.
Now, granted, I don't know. I don't think you'd post if your parent was... I don't know.
Okay.
But
okay.
I have said, like, I'm really getting worried. Or I've sent the email saying, like, please let me know that you're okay or whatever. Or then I'm like, I'm taking this personally. I'm trying not to take it personally.
Right,
please just send me a thing. And so anyway, and then it turns out that I found a little bit of a tangent, but I wrote this. I'm signed up for a writing class because I had off a certain amount of time before I start directing again. And I was like, I'm going to write. I'm so tired of developing other people's things, as you were talking about. I need to do my own. So I signed up for this writing class, and like the Friday before, the guy's like, send me your samples of your work. Let's talk about what you're going to work on. I just thought I'd just go to the class and I'd figure it out. I'm like,
oh boy. So
I go looking through my computer in 2014, I wrote this thing called My Best Friend's Family, and it's based on this person, but it takes a turn where, by the way, this is when we were still friendly and talking all the time.
Yeah.
Basically, we're like this fabulous gay guy from Los Angeles goes to New York to hang out with his girlfriend who has got kids, but he totally ignores them. But then she gets cancer, and it becomes sort of Steel Magnolias meets The Odd Couple, and she dies, and I have to go try to raise these kids with this shutdown straight dude, and we become a couple.
Oh my God, it's a little Beaches in there too.
It's a little bit of Beaches in there too.
Huh.
And how that works, and how I learn how to love, and how they learn how to, there's a whole thing. But so now I'm writing this thing, and I'm writing about her every day. And I'm literally writing about her death.
Holy shit.
But I don't speak to her. And so she's on my mind, and I'm like...
But that is a death.
Yeah, it
like
is.
There's a death in that relationship.
It hurts me so much.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, baby.
Thanks. And of course, I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, maybe I didn't do anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is also when we don't have any of those answers or clarity, your mind will make up all those things. It'll fill the gap with all the stuff. But it is, I think that's the part of being an adult. We don't have a lot of space to talk about. Like when kids go through things like that, or when we're younger and we've got all that drama in our friendships and relationships, it feels like there's a space to have that kind of conversation. But I think when you're like a grown up and you're still experiencing like all of that fear and feeling and like, where did she go and why isn't she talking to me and what did I do wrong? And then also, I don't know, like she also has an account, if she's alive and well and able to, she has an accountability to talk to you or, you know, and tell you what's going on if she chooses. And if she doesn't, that's probably the hardest thing ever, is to not have the answer.
Yeah. And I also get that, like, because this has happened to me too, where a good friend reaches out.
Yeah.
And they send you like maybe a long email and you're like, oh my God, I
it.
can't respond back to this right now. But you want to.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'll get back to it tomorrow or the next day, and you just don't have time. And so instead of just saying like, I love you, I'm thinking of you, I want to respond back, I need more time, you just wait. And then all of a sudden a couple of months go by and it's too long. And then you're like,
do you know what I started doing for that? I just started leaving voice text, you know, like you can just, in those moments, because sometimes even just typing that out, if we're driving in the car or whatever, like obviously you don't want to do that. But I will just now in the moment, just leave a voicemail so that you can hear my voice, just to say like, hi, I love you. Thank you for that text. I hear you. I see you. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just because that takes me 20 seconds
Right.
and then it's like.
It's an acknowledgement.
Yeah, it is an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's bumming me out.
I know.
And by the way, I might leave her a voice text.
I think you should.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't give up on that. But I also think it's interesting because whatever it's serving in your life right now, it's serving as material to look within and to maybe make something great from it right now.
True. It's interesting
basically what I'm saying is just use that shit and win an award.
I'm going to.
Okay.
It's interesting that I had killed her in this script before we were a friendship. You know what I mean? So and that's only such a small part of the story. The story is about really the relationship with the boys and someone becoming a parent themselves and all that. But it's fascinating that it's just weird.
I know,
it's
you're
weird.
in a different stage and place of your life. Like sometimes I'm looking at you right now, I'm like, I can't believe you have babies.
I cannot either.
It wasn't always part of the plan.
No,
was it?
You know, my ex-husband and I talked about it. Corey and I talked about it. But and I'm sorry if you're listening to this, Corey, but I was always like, what, I'm going to raise children and you? Like, no. But Brian always was, he just is a kid magnet. He just like, the kids love him. And he's so close to his nieces and nephews.
That guy.
He's that guy. He was always meant to be a dad. And I was like, this guy needs to be a dad.
Also, those children look so much like him.
It's crazy.
It's like baby Brian's.
I know.
But they're so delish.
They're
I'm just so happy for you because I think, so let's talk about this turn that you're in right now, moving from acting to directing and all those things that you said made you really good and zoned in to be doing that kind of stuff. What are you finding that's lighting you up doing this that didn't light you up before? Or what's new about this for you?
I think that I always wanted a bigger bite, you know, and directing is all encompassing. I mean, you are managing up, you're managing down, you're managing sideways. It's visual, it's emotional, it's communicative. It's just the nuts and bolts of logistics. There's just so many logistical things. But then there's also, it's really right and left brain, like hopefully in perfect harmony. And I do find that sometimes I can, even though I'm a very emotional guy and I'm very attached to my center and I feel like I'm very empathetic, I can really left brain something like hardcore. So, and sometimes I need to. Sometimes there's like, I'm doing a huge benefit in an episode and it's like, 17 speaking roles and 100 backgrounds in one room for 3 days shooting, and there's a whole it's almost like my little Invasion of Normandy maps. It's like you're going to be here and you're going to be here and you're going to be here. This is how we're going to get this. So you have to sort of left brain it. But then just like with acting, there's always a moment where when you're there, you have to let go and let the right brain take over.
How about as a director too, all the people that you're working with now that you need to rely on in a different way?
Oh yeah. Well, the best thing I ever heard, the guy named Norman Buckley basically said, he was like, you're going to go to a concept meeting, which is all your department heads, the very first morning of your very first day of preparation. You've gotten the script either the night before or that morning before the meeting, and people are going to be asking you questions. And they're going to say, how do you see this hospital? What do you see? And you're supposed to be coming up with the answers. He goes, but just so you know, is an exploratory meeting, and you are not the expert at all of those things. Like when they say, oh, this new hospital we're going to be going to, what color do you see the scrubs? Turn to the costume designer, who is the expert at costume design, and say, what scrubs have you used in the past? What scrubs are off limits? I noticed that some people are wearing light blue and some people are dark blue. Would it make sense if they wore purple here? Ask the questions and say, imagining pink, but give me 3 choices and let me know. So put it back in their court and use them for the experts that they are.
See, I think this, just from what I know about you, this whole career transition growth feels so right on the money for you. You've always been a producer. Always. Remember Hot in Hollywood?
Oh my God.
We won't go there. But like you have a producer brain. That was a death.
Yeah.
But you're a creator, you're a producer, but to me, you're an aggregator of people. Remember your Friday night cocktail hours across the way?
I know.
Like you are also a magnet in your own right, sweetheart. I think of like pulling people into you. And then when I imagine you, I've not seen you work in action on a set, but I can imagine you being that director, that cruise director, like that kind of aggregator of all of that talent.
I love it. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And it's challenging.
Yeah.
It is challenging. And it's also like I had the good fortune of having 4 jobs in a row last year. And, like I said before, as an actor, I had lots of time on my hands.
Right.
And because when I worked, I wasn't on a show. Like a lot of times actors are a series regular on a show and they've got crazy hours. I was doing a lot of commercials and occasionally a little guest spot here and there. But the most I worked was like a week at a time, and it wasn't a lot of lines to memorize. And it was usually away at some destination that was sort of fun and exciting. And so it was a little more easy, a little more, just a little easier. And suddenly I'm working, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning when I direct because I still meditate and I journal and I do a gratitude list and like to have a second before I'm like heading out the door. And then I like to get on set about 45 minutes before everybody else so I can like walk it and get my cup of coffee and wake up. And then I'm there. I wouldn't say I'm there last because there's definitely people that are working harder than me, doing the heavy lifting. But like all the producers and writers and actors have gone home, and I'm usually there about an hour after as well. And you're just on the entire time.
Yep.
And so your stamina and then going from job to job to job is challenging, really challenging. And so I really, this past year was looking at like, being gentle with myself, being like, I've never worked this hard in my life. This is the hardest I've ever worked. And I have children too. And then also looking at, I don't want to be the guy that just has a ton of credits. Yeah. I don't want to be like, I did 4 jobs in a row last year. That's not important to me. It's important to tell stories, be present with the stories and the actors and the producers and my fellow workmen and workwoman and enjoy, like really enjoy what we're bringing to life.
It goes by like that.
It does. And so that means sometimes taking time off to have a second to breathe and be with my kids so that I can show up fresh to the next job and feel like I'm bringing in my best work.
What is this script that you're writing now? You told me it was about death. What is it about?
It's this one about
this is the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
With your friend. Oh, that is what you're working on.
That's what I'm working on. That's what I'm writing right now.
As a movie.
And then there's another film that I've been brought on as a director for that Jonathan Slavin wrote about two gay best friends, and one of them is dying and they go on a road trip. It's like Thelma and Louise. It's a very, very dark comedy.
Wow.
And that I've been working with him on for about a year and a half, developing it. And so we're just about to take it out to get some money. Yeah. So a lot of death stories.
I know, but I think that's so fascinating. I just think that's so fascinating because I think death for me also in the loss space is always something has to close before something opens.
Yes.
And begins, right?
Yeah.
So when you had kids,
going back to that, talking about my divorce, like at the time I was filing for bankruptcy, getting a divorce, moving out of my apartment, and my Hot in Hollywood, my benefit was ending. So I was like, everything that I had said, like, well, at least I have my relationship, at least I have my property, at least I have my benefit. I remember you got rid of your car, remember? Everything gone. And I was like, who am I? If I'm not all these things, then who am I? And I thank my lucky stars that, first of all, that all that happened. That like I got financial freedom. I was able to I didn't end up filing for bankruptcy, but I cut up all my cards. It took me, I think, 5 years to pay off the credit cards. And then I lived without credit cards for 7 years, which is you can't even rent a car. You have to use one place will take a debit card. And so everything I had to just figure out. And then I think thank God that relationship ended. So now I have these, you were talking about kids, I've got these.
I know.
Beautiful
well,
children.
And Brian, remember, because you brought Brian to our wedding 7 years ago.
Yes. early
He was
on.
your date.
That's right. Yeah.
But I remember, I mean, I lived through that with you. I mean, obviously, I did perform your marriage ceremony twice to Corey and would do it again in a heartbeat, although I noticed you did not ask me to marry you and Brian.
No.
But
If at first you don't succeed. Well, they did say try again. But
come up the rear. No, but I mean, obviously, like we were in more communication then when all of those endings were happening. And I think one of the things that I recall very acutely about you at that time was your resilience, was the fact. Because I remember when you had a debit card and you didn't have a credit card. And I remember when you had to get rid of your car lease or had somebody take off. I mean, I remember all those moments. And I remember how you handled them most of all, which was you always knew that you were going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, definitely like talking about what's happening over there.
I don't know. Are you okay?
Oh.
Why don't you hop out if you need to hop out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought they were laughing. I was like,
No.
I guess we.
It's okay. Let me just take that back for 1 second. So I remember watching you go through those experiences. And the biggest thing that I did take away from you just as your friend at that time was watching how you not just, I don't think, like determined to bounce back at that time, because I know it leveled you, it laid you out, but it didn't keep you down.
No. Well, remember that childhood?
Yeah.
I mean, I was used to shit going crazy, going sideways. And so and it was hard. You're right. It did level me, but I definitely got back up. I definitely.
And now look at you.
Remember we said joyous, resilient, and something else.
And innocent.
And innocent.
Because that's just it. Because you were like, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
And then I remember you brought Brian to the wedding, and I was like, holy hot dog. You were snackered in. He's just such a good egg. But I'm happy for your happiness, and I'm happy for your growth.
Thank you.
And I'm happy you said yes to come in here and talk to me about this.
Oh, I love it. I was scared.
You were?
I was scared, yeah.
But you trust me. I'm not going to lead you down a crazy
No, it's
path.
true. But I didn't want to say anything that was just stupid.
Oh.
And then I didn't want to come off as being like a know-it-all as well. Like sometimes I like to just be preachy.
I don't think you did that. Okay. But I do want to ask you this kind of in the theme of this show and the notion of we're all going to die anyway. Did having kids also create more anxiety and fear about dying? Because what I hear from people who have children is like it just becomes more acute where you're like, holy shit, here are these little people who live outside of my heart's living outside of my body. And like, did you feel more consumed about death? You've had a lot of death in your life. You had a lot of losses in your life.
Both my parents, two of my brothers, one of my closest friends.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm pretty good with death. Like I hear, I'm always sort of like, if it happens to someone, it happens. It's their time, and I don't get as emotional about it. However, if I ever even think for 1 second about something ever happening to those two kids, I couldn't. That would just be. That's one thing that I just cannot. And so, and there's the sadness. I miss my buddy Dennis. I miss my friend that in New York that I don't speak to anymore, even though she's still living. There's but also because we're older parents, I'm 48. Like, I'm not going to be around forever. When I think about like, what am I going to instill in the kids, before I go? And I also worry. I worry about, like, you think about your parents in some seminal moment that happened. It could have been like you spilled something and your mother like went off about it. And you're like, I'll never forget that moment. And you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? What am I doing and saying right now that they will never, ever forget? Yeah. And so it does make everything a little bit more like, I'm a little bit more walking on eggshells. Yeah. A little bit like I want everything to be great. And then also just knowing that sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'll do something that's sort of shitty. Like I the other day, they were playing with something and they were like fighting over it. And I was like, don't fight over that, guys. And they're fighting. And I took it and I like smacked it down on the table. I was like, no more of that. And they both like looked at me and they were fine. But then I was like, I'm sorry. I wasn't very nice of me. I apologize. But you can't fight like that over it. But like learning to be able to say you're sorry to your kids. Yeah. I was making an amends to my daughter when she was like 3 months old. Like, I just was like, one night she wouldn't go to sleep, and it was like, I was doing everything possible, and I was like, I don't know what you want. And it was 3 a.m. And then I was like, you know what? This little 3-month-old baby does not need to be yelled at.
Yeah.
So,
but in some ways, they're there too, just to continue to reflect back to you all that growth. I really do. I maintain this, even though I know I've not chosen to have any biologically, but like just in my heart, in my spirit, I believe that like by you being conscious of that, that's also energy passed to her that she knows there's accountability, there's connection, you're paying attention, you're tuned in. I think some of the, in just my own experience, I think some of the harder things are when you've got parents in denial, not tuned in, not healthy, not well, not working on their own stuff. That's really hard. I think a parent who's imperfect and can be upfront about that and own their stuff, you're modeling a way to be a human.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think about that all the time in terms of letting them know. I actually even said to her, even at 3 months old, I was like, you know what, I might lose my temper again. And I know it's not okay just to always lose your temper and then apologize, but I'll always apologize and I'll just try to do better. And, she's not giving me anything because she's 3 months old. But also the modeling thing, though, is like I wanted the kids to read. I'm like, I want them to be big readers. I was never a reader. And I'm like, well, and we read to them all the time. I'm like, but also they have to see us reading.
Right.
We have to do it as well. But then it's also like I can't be perfect. I can't be like doing all the things all the time. So Brian and I try to do a thing where if we get an argument with each other, we try to make up in front of them so that they see like it's all workout. We can all work it out.
It's all a work in progress.
It's all a work in progress.
We are a work in progress.
And I will say something that I just feel compelled to say to you, which is you and Felipe choosing not to have kids does not mean that you're not a mother, and you're such a nurturer. You're such a nurturer of not just projects and creativity, but of people. And there's something so maternal about you that I just think you're using, and you've raised so many of us. Even though you're younger than me, you bitch.
I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
I made her cry.
I love you. You did make me cry.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks. I feel
really
that.
mean
That's
it.
a journey I'm on for sure, is figuring out. I'm also learning how to reparent myself, and it's bringing up a lot of ways to be more loving and maternal to myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, baby.
Yeah, of course.
One of my signature questions that I like to ask, because I think about it weirdly all the time. What would be a perfect death for you? What would be your ideal way to leave the planet?
I'd like to just go in my sleep.
Same.
Yeah, I think it's not always easier for the people left behind because they didn't have a time to process and get ready for it. But I hope that my kids are able to live a life in which they're able to say everything to me in real time.
Yeah.
The good and the bad and the ugly, so that there isn't things left unsaid.
Yeah.
I think the unsaid stuff is the hardest.
I do too. Did you feel that with your parents?
I had said everything to them.
Okay.
I had said everything to them when they were healthy. I had said everything to them when they were sick. I had been there for them. I did worry a lot that I was 3,000 miles away, so I didn't get to see them all the time.
Yeah.
Although I was taking care of all their business and finances and all. There was so much to take care of. But I also had to come to terms with the fact that my mother and father, they both died about at 86. They had made 86 years worth of choices to get them to the place that they were in. And early on, I had asked my mother if she wanted to move to California, and she was like, no. And then before she went to nursing home, I was like, well, maybe I can get you help at the house. She was like, no. And so I tried everything I can, but she wanted the life that she wanted to have. And at some point, when she was in the nursing home, I wanted to try to bring her to California, and I realized that it was too late to bring someone that had been, for years in one facility and was like, they knew her really well, and to uproot her and pull her out of the life that she had there when she didn't know what was going on anyway would only be a salve for my own soul, but not what was best for her. And it was like, okay. And then again, I was like, these were the choices that she made. There were other choices that could have been made, but these are the choices that she made. So this is what's
That's
happening.
right.
And I didn't make the choice ever to move back to Delaware to care for her. I didn't make choice to move back to Delaware for any reason at all anyway.
Right.
Just like she didn't make the choice to move back to her hometown.
Right.
You know, but it took a second. And I always have to remind myself a lot of like, okay, this is not my life. This is her life. And I can't just swoop in and just change a whole 80 some years of choices.
But that actually is really comforting to me, because I think if for anybody out there who's worried that they're going to follow in their parents' footsteps, if that's not something that they want to do. And for me, in some ways, some of it is not what I want to do. But I think what you just said really crystallized it for me, which is that, right, they've lived however many years of choices, and we get to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And every choice that we're making, every way that you treat your children differently, or you and Brian come up with a different strategy for parenting, all of that stuff is a choice that you're making. That's why I think I think that's why our fears will never be fulfilled in the way we think they might be, of repeating those patterns, because they're different choices.
Yeah.
And I'll promise you, like, if you go before me and I'm hanging around your kids, I'll make sure that they feel all the love, and I'll take care of them any way I can.
Will you play this podcast for them?
Fuck yes. I'll be like, yo, daddy was crazy. I do need to meet Bowie, because I need to fucking eat his face.
Oh, God, he's so chunky and amazing.
Oh, my God.
Oh, he's so cute. He's trying so hard to speak. He just isn't. It's not. He was much more. She spoke a little sooner and she walked a little later, but he's much more physical.
Girls are, we're smarter in all the ways.
It's true. No joke. That is very true. It's crazy.
I cannot wait to spend more time with your babies.
Yeah, they're adorbs. Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, baby.
I love you.
I love you too.
Can we hug?
Yeah, we got to. Well, I love you. So I'm seeing a recurring theme in some of these interviews, which is that I have these friends in my life for a long period of time, decades even, and we don't often see each other because people have grown up and gotten families and careers and gotten busy. And so I don't see them regularly, but I love them deeply. And then I tell them I'm going to do a podcast, and they show up, and we're kind of having these reunion moments right in front of you, unplanned, because this entire conversation is unscripted. And there's a little part of me that sometimes wonders if we're kind of oversharing too much, or we might say some things that might sound like inside jokes, but I'm going to not overthink that. And I'm just going to share with you the people that I love in my life, and share with you the strangers that I'm just meeting. But Michael Medico is a special soul, because he's got that innocence. He described himself as in his childhood as innocent. And I think that really is how I would describe him too. He's one of the only adult humans I know who's retained such joy and zest for living in the face of a lot of difficult moments in his life. So he's a role model and a love for me, and I'm just really enjoying sharing the people that I love with you. I hope you're enjoying. You've been listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with me, Jess Weiner. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can also watch this podcast by checking out my YouTube channel for filmed episodes, behind the scenes footage, and all other kinds of amazing video goodies. And of course, you can always visit me at jesswiener.com. We're All Gonna Die Anyway is exec produced by me and produced by Lauren Chavez Myers. Our episodes are recorded, filmed, and edited by Jeff Franklin and Adam Lippert of B Film. And our original amazing music is by Becca and Destiny Petrell. As always, I want to send a special thank you to the love of my life, the amor de mi vida, Felipe Lopez. And if you love this podcast, please make sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, if there is something that stood out to you from today's episode, I want to hear about it. So if you want to share your own story, leave a comment, ask a question, please send me an email at podcast@jesswiener.com. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye, babies.